Real estate is one of the simplest ways to build long-term wealth, and one of the easiest ways to get wrecked if you don't know what you're doing. So this show, it exists for one main reason: clarity. Me and Keith, we're talking deals, markets, financing, flips, all of it, but always through the lens of what's working, what isn't working, and why. I'm your host, Dayton Lindsey, and I promise you that this podcast is going to help you save time, money, and you from painful lessons. So, let's get into this. You know how disgusting it is to pick your beard hair out of the sink? I'm like,
that's why they make his and her sinks. My wife doesn't have to deal with that.
You made a good point.
Yeah.
Gosh dang.
Yep, that's right.
Bastards. But anyways, welcome friends to the First Deal podcast. I don't know, we might start doing more of these cold opens where we're just talking about nonsense. I don't know yet.
Cool.
But, Keith, ready to answer some more questions?
I'm as ready as I can be. Yeah.
Excellent. So, where is it here? House hacking seems to be everywhere right now. Is it actually the best first move for a beginner, or is it overhyped? Now, for everyone that is listening, in case you don't know what house hacking is, house hacking, as I define it, is when people or a certain individual owns a house and then they rent off certain sections of the house. So that's basement, one room, or even just a floor, multiple rooms, and whatnot. So my question to you is that a good first move?
Yeah. And let's expand that definition even a little bit further to include duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes, which still are classified as residential. These are also a way for you to get in, and you're not just renting rooms, you're actually renting units. And the answer to your question is, as always, it depends, but I'm a huge fan of this if you're single. If you are single, this is the best entrance, because I think that there's a really important blend of like business dynamics and personal dynamics when you get into living quarters, because like if you are trying to get your business off the ground and you're just sharing a living space with terrible people that are keeping you up at night and are stressing you out and taking up your mental bandwidth, and your capacity is dealing with them rather than working on your business and growing that, then this is terrible. And especially when you're getting married, let's talk about when you're getting married, like bringing somebody over to your house and you're like in that courting phase, not really super attractive. The fact that you live with, 3 other dudes. And certainly not once you are married. I don't think that I would want that dynamic. If that floats your boat and y'all are fine with that and you discuss that with your spouse, men are way more open to doing this than women, of course. But most of the time, ladies don't like this. Maybe if it was a proper triplex, a proper, quadplex or duplex, then this is a little bit different, as it's not shared living space. But in the traditional sense of, the original definition, which is you're taking a single family house and you're renting out rooms, definitely not. Most definitely not. But even when we get into duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes, you still have communal areas like the front yard, the backyard. If there's a pool, parking areas, things like this, that ladies, they want their privacy as well as their security. And if you're going to be working outside the home and it's a quadplex and there's 3 other men who live in the other ones, at any point in time that your husband is gone, maybe not so much. So these are things to be mindful of, but I am a huge fan of house hacking. I think that it is a very low barrier of entry, and it's an exceptional way of at least living for free, if not making money on your very first property.
If you had 100,000 today and we're starting from scratch, what would you do with it in the current market?
I think that I would want to bookmark about a third of that for business development. I really don't think that you need $100,000 to be successful or to set yourself up for success, in at least not in our industry. I think that $35,000 is enough for you to be super dangerous. That's both entity setup as well as education, as well as tech stack, all the softwares and everything like that, as well as paying for a coach or mentor to help you create efficiencies in your business and collapse time so that you can learn what they've learned in a decade or 2 or 3 decades and put it into just a year or so. But marketing is going to be the largest portion of that. I think that you should probably allocate, if you had $100,000, I mean, that's a super good budget starting off. You shouldn't, just because you have $100,000 doesn't mean that you should spend it. And so I think that's probably the first thing. I'm not going to, if I had $100,000 and that's the only thing that I had and I'm starting off brand new, there's no way I'm blowing that. I've seen people do this. I personally know people who have done this, and they've signed up for these super expensive coaching programs, the minimum, $35,000, $50,000, $65,000, $75,000, $80,000. I know these people. Like, I know the coaches who are charging $35,000, $50,000, $65,000, $80,000. And I'm not saying that they're bad. I'm just saying that that's very expensive, that it's extremely risky, and I don't see that as being responsible, again, especially if you're married and especially if you have children. I really think that you only need about $35,000 to be successful in this business. And let's define success as getting your first deal done and others in the pipeline ready to be done. So maybe 2, 3, maybe 4 if you're really good at what you do, that are still in the pipeline, but at least 2 left in the pipeline after your first deal is complete, and that money has been returned to you, mind you.
Okay.
So $35,000 of seed capital is more than enough. That'll again pay for your education. That will pay for your software technology stack. That will pay for a coach or mentor, and the largest chunk of that, probably half of it, is going to go towards marketing. And I would probably just choose 1 if you're brand new, 1 if you're not new, 2 forms of marketing. And PPC would probably have to be one of them.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe
So
a blend of like.
I'm going to bring up the. Well, what were you saying?
I said it would probably be a blend of PPC and PPL. If I have the money, I'm going to go ahead and spend the money to save my time and mental capacity to be doing deals and to be learning very quickly.
So I'm going to bring up the question of, you were talking about the 35,000 to get started to cover pretty much all your basis points. So there's going to be someone in the audience or listening to this that's going to say, but Keith, I don't have any money. How can I get into real estate with no money? Because I'm broke as a joke. I want to make it big. And how would you recommend I do that?
Yeah. So here's what I'll tell you. If you don't have money, you're going to have to spend time and energy. So there's 3 currencies of life: time, money, and energy. And if you're lacking in one of those currencies, if you're lacking in the money currency, then you're going to have to spend time and mental bandwidth to compensate, because all things cost the same amount. Like, every lead costs the same amount. It just depends. Are you spending it with your mental bandwidth? Are you spending your time? Or are you spending your money to bring that lead in? So can you get into real estate with very little money? Yes, I did. I was 20 years old when I got started 10 years ago, and I was also active duty in the Marines. And so I didn't have a lot of time. I had to spend every ounce of mental bandwidth in order to build this business, and as well as every last waking moment of my time. Like literally, I was listening to audiobooks and training programs every time I drove, every time I was going for a run, every time I was at the gym, every time I was showering, every time I was pooping, every time I was doing dishes, every time I was doing laundry, every time I was doing anything where my mind was idle, I had to be spending that mental capacity building the business because I had very little income. I literally had a couple $100s per month that I could spend on the business. So is it possible? Yes. And I have quite literally turned around and said, I want to be the person and I want to have the company that I wish I had 10 years ago when I got started. And so we have training that is $0 to $47. It is like ludicrously cheap. We have software that is anywhere from $25 a month to $750 per month, like super, super cheap to super expensive. And we have coaching, we have 3 different tiers of coaching. So there, but I will tell you that the tiers of coaching are super expensive because I am expensive. The moment I say yes to you, I'm saying no to building my own business. Therefore, I should be fairly compensated for that. But you can have the education and you can have the software for very, I should say relatively inexpensive, couple $100s per month, and that will set you up for success. You just have to understand if you're spending less money, you have to spend more time and you have to spend more energy.
Quick aside, if you're getting value out of this, make sure to hit the like, subscribe, and drop a comment down below with what you want Keith and me to cover next. It helps the channel out a lot, and it tells us what you want to learn about. Anyways, back to the video. How many units do you need before real estate becomes a full-time income? Now, I would imagine, say, like one duplex or 2 duplexes probably won't be enough to replace a 9-to-5 job. So what does that path look like to replace your full-time income?
So there's 2 things that, this is a great question, and it's a question that I get asked almost every time I'm speaking at a local RIA event. And so here's my generic answer. My generic answer is 10. You need 10 units. However, there's really 2 factors that we're not talking about when I say 10. And so I'll go ahead and I'll bring those to the forefront. The first is that the number is going to change based off of your income. So average earner in America right now makes $50,000 or something like that per year. That's very easy to replace in a fairly short period of time too. Like some people can do that in 1 year. Most are going to do that in 2 years. Almost everybody that I work with can do that in 3 years. And the more income you make, the harder it is, obviously, sometimes an order of magnitude. So we have several people in REI Automated as a coaching client, like a private client of mine, that are employed at very high executive levels that are making more than $300,000 per year. So they're making really good money and they don't have a lot of time. And what they're doing at their job is really important. They're really bought in. They're very good at what they do, so on and so forth. It takes a lot longer for those folks, not only because they're not making, they're not having to replace $50,000. They're having to replace $300,000. So it's 6 times as much money, but they also have less of the other currencies, which is energy and time. Mm-hmm. So it's not 6 times harder. It's like 10 times harder to replace that $300,000. This is take home pay, right? Not gross. Gross income is gross. We're talking about net income, like to their family, take home after expenses and everything. So that's the first factor. And then there is an interesting second factor, which is actually your tax status. If you are a real estate professional, you have to claim a certain number of hours in order to claim a real estate professional tax status. And this is insanely beneficial. It's like 100 hours or something. I don't know exactly,
Really?
but I am well over that number, whatever it is. So even my wife is, and she barely works in the business comparatively. So I'm a real estate professional. On my tax status, there are massive tax savings when it comes to this. You don't actually have to make nearly as much in your business. If you are a real estate professional, this adds like 30% to your bottom line because you're paying less in taxes. And so I would encourage anybody to get more educated than I am right now. I don't know it cold right now. I think it's like 100 hours. And you have to be able to prove it, right? Nobody's ever asked me to prove it, by the way, and I've claimed it for like 10 years. However, you do have to be able to articulate, yeah, I mean, this is the time that I spent on this house, and I was in meetings for this, and blah, blah, blah. So claim real estate professional tax status, and it puts approximately 30% to your bottom line just by doing that. So you don't have to earn as much as your normal income is, because if you're making, for example, if you're making $300,000 net, you're probably making about $500,000 gross in that job. Your salary is actually $500,000, but you're only bringing home $300,000. Similarly, that what did we say, $50,000 per year salary, they're not that's their net take home pay. So their gross take home pay is probably about $62,000 to $65,000. The cool thing is, the moment you claim real estate professional tax status, you no longer have to be making that much. You can make a little bit less. Therefore, it's easier for you to replace that income. Okay, so how many deals? Well, it depends. It depends on what those deals are as well. So if we're doing wholesaling, the average wholesale is about $18,000, $17,000 to $18,000. So you're pretty consistently going to be getting like $10,000 pops, $20,000 pops, $15,000 pops, $22,000 pops, so on and so forth. If you're going to be doing fix and flips, then likely you're going to be making, I mean, minimum $35,000. Like if we were to look at what's this called?
Bell curve.
Thank you, bell curve, and you're to look at the majority of your flips right here. It's going to be like $35,000 as the minimum, and maybe $85,000 as the maximum. Of course, you're going to do some flips where you only make $10,000 or maybe even lose money. And yeah, of course, you're going to have some flips that are six figures, making $150,000. But the majority of them, probably $35,000 to about $80,000 to $85,000. Let's just call it minimum. Average or mean is going to be probably $60,000 or so. You don't need very many of those to replace your income. Like literally most of my clients will just do one or two of them, and it will take them 6 months to complete those two and get paid, maybe 8 months to complete those two and get paid. And in 8 months, they've just more than doubled their income. Like they've completely replaced their W-2 income. And the cool thing is, a lot of the times what I'm doing with my clients is I'm encouraging them to keep every other to every third house. And so they'll hold on to one as a rental, and then they'll do a fix and flip, and then they'll do a wholesale, and then they hold on to one as a rental. And then they'll do a fix and flip, and then they'll owner finance the next one. So the house is sold, but they're taking paper, meaning a mortgage is owed to them. So it's still passive income coming to them. They get to stay in the deal. So now they have a rental as well as portfolio of notes. You can have a portfolio of houses. You can have a portfolio of notes. I have both. So this is a very neat way of diversification, building up your floor. What I mean by that is building up your passive income. And I'm going to put passive income in quotes because anybody with any amount of rentals understands that there is no such thing as passive income. Notes is as close to passive income as you can get with real estate investing outside of like a REIT, a real estate investment trust. So that's what I'm doing. And every other to every third, they're holding that asset, because that's the thing that I wish I had done differently. My first 8 years, 7.5 years, I didn't hold on to anything. I sold every single house ever. And some of these were huge cash pops, massive equity. A lot of times with really lucrative underlying debt too, like 0% interest, seller financing. man, I wish I hadn't extinguished that. Or $180,000 of equity. And I just kind of got greedy, and I was like, dude, I would love to. I don't really care that there's a whole bunch of equity. I want my money, and I want it now, like that commercial.
Yeah.
So, getting that $150,000 cash pop was really important to my ego at the time. And so I sold that house, and I totally wish I hadn't. So that's the thing. If you do 10 deals, you're likely going to replace your income. It does matter though. What is your income? Are you a real estate professional, and what type of deals are you doing? Because a wholesale versus a wholesale versus a wrap versus a rental versus a novation, they're all going to have a little bit different net profit center.
Do you lay awake at night in a cold sweat thinking about how much money you could have saved onto, or how many rental properties you could have?
Here's what I will tell you. Here's what I will tell you. I got out of the Marines after being in for 8 years. I got out in 2020. And when I got out, my net worth, and I got out at 20, I think I was 25 or 26 at the time. 25. I was 25 years old. My net worth would have been more than $1 million higher had I just kept one house every year. If I only kept one house every year leading up to that point, I would have had more than $1 million net worth more when I got out. And $1 million net worth at 25 is a lot. My life would have been a little bit different had I not been so, I don't know, egotistical, honestly.
What's your net worth now?
That's for me to know and for you to never find out.
we don't disclose that here. All right, one more question for you.
Nothing. It's zero. It's negative.
Zero. It's literally zero. Everything is in an offshore account somewhere. I basically claim food stamps.
That's right. All right, you said you have one more question. That was funny.
How do you decide between buying your first property versus continuing to rent wherever you're at and investing the difference elsewhere, say into, I don't know, an REIT or maybe even stocks?
When you say buying your first property, you're talking about buying your first personal residence that you are going to live in as a primary home. Okay. Really, really good question. And I think that, so I'm going to be this is going to piss off a lot of people.
Good.
I think that you should screw the numbers and put your family first.
Okay.
I think that you should screw the numbers. To hell with the numbers. Nobody cares about the numbers. Your freaking calculator and your stupid ass spreadsheet can go to hell. I don't give a rip about what the numbers say. I think you should put your family first. And just realize that you can make all the money that you want. And if you lose your family because you put money above them, you done screwed up in life, in my opinion. If you're single, go ahead, house hack, buy a house, put people in it, help, float the mortgage, if not even make money. That's wonderful. But if you're in a season of life, I got married super young. I got married when I was 18 years old. Me and my wife have been together for a long time. Screw the numbers. Put your family first. And that needs to be a decision between you and your spouse.
That is a good point. That it does fall down to the individual too. For some, it could be they would potentially see it as the numbers should work, and that is putting the family first, because if you're a guy, you're obviously going to default to the provider mentality. So the numbers probably are going to mean a lot to you in that scenario. So if I'm assuming you were talking from experience there, but with that mindset in place, is that still the route you would take, was screw the numbers and put the family first?
Yeah. If you are married, that is I will die on that hill. I put my marriage above money all day, every day. And you have a point of saying, like, as a provider, it's my job to bring in income. And I'm here to tell you that there's other ways of bringing in income, like figure it out. I don't really care about your excuse. There's other things that you can do. This is not the only way. And if you feel like this is the only way, then you have a severely limited mentality. What I will say is, for the people who are single, this is especially, let me speak to the veterans. If you haven't used your VA loan, like, that is single-handedly the biggest utility that the US government has ever given to any group of people, is the VA loan. So you should be using that to your advantage. And then maybe even going back to our original topic on this podcast, house hacking. It's fantastic, and it'll set you up. It will absolutely set you up for financial security. However, what I will tell you is, if you're married and you have that provider mentality, yes, that brings in financial safety at the cost of physical safety. And your wife is going to prioritize physical safety over financial stability all day. So I'm talking about, I have the mentality of the house hacking thing right now when I said that.
Yeah,
if you were
that
buying,
makes sense.
if you're buying a house, or you're, for example, choosing to live, like, let's take this to an extreme, because truth is found in extremes. Let's say that you want to just find the cheapest place that you can, like, it's a ratty freaking apartment. It's disgusting. It's in a bad neighborhood. There's riffraff every single time. Is your wife going to love that decision? Is she going to, she wants to support you. She wants to love the decision, but is she going to want to support that decision? No, probably not. Probably not. And you saving $600 a month, dude, go make it. Go make it elsewhere.
Well put, and I think that's where we're going to end today's episode off on. The house hacking episode.
Yeah. All right, guys. See you in the next episode.
See you next time, guys. Real estate isn't magic. It's a skill. And the people who win long term are the ones that keep stacking the reps. That means learning, analyzing, staying patient, and making good decisions. If you want to keep building that skill with us, make sure to subscribe and send this to someone who needs to hear it, because I know you know someone that needs to. Anyways, that's all for today. Take care.